The cemetery was eerily silent, the air heavy with sorrow. A little girl, her tiny frame trembling with grief, leaned over her father's coffin for what seemed to be a final embrace. The crowd gathered around held their breath, the weight of loss palpable in the crisp air. But then, just as her whispered goodbye broke the silence, something happened. Something so unexpected, so utterly bewildering, that the gathered mourners erupted into gasps and cries of disbelief. What did this grieving child do? And what shocking turn of events could leave an entire crowd stunned beyond words? Brace yourself, because this story will veer into a direction you won't see coming. The morning sun had barely stretched its golden fingers over the sprawling city of San Antonio, Texas, when Michael Walker trudged toward the construction site. His steps were steady, purposeful, despite the toll years of backbreaking labor had taken on him. His hands, rough and scarred, told a tale of resilience. His back ached from relentless toil, but his spirit remained unbroken. Michael's life had been an unending battle against the odds. Born into poverty, he carried the weight of dreams too big for his circumstances. His parents had shared the same hopes for a brighter future, but life had not been kind. They passed away when Michael was just a boy, leaving him to navigate the harsh world alone. He took on whatever work he could find, his days divided between hauling bricks at construction sites and grueling night shifts at factories. Yet, amidst the hardship, there was one thing that brought him genuine joy: a humble street corner where he cooked and sold weikai. The fragrant aroma of rice and beans wafting through the air wasn't just a source of income. It was a reminder of the simple pleasures and a dream of something better. Michael's story wasn't just one of survival. It was a testament to unyielding determination. But little did he know, the struggles and choices ahead would challenge him in ways he could never imagine. It was during one of these busy days, with the sun blazing down, that he first saw her, Bella. Her deep brown eyes sparkled as she smiled, and Michael couldn't help but notice her graceful presence among the crowd. Bella began appearing at the same time every day, her footsteps light as she approached Michael's modest food stall. Michael would always keep a portion of weikai aside for her, anticipating her arrival. They spoke little at first, exchanging smiles and polite greetings. But as the days turned into weeks, their conversations grew deeper. Bella was kind and full of laughter, a light in Michael's hard life. One day, as storm clouds gathered overhead, Michael noticed Bella walking toward his stall. He had just finished selling his last portion for the day. The skies opened up in a torrential downpour, and Michael scrambled to pack up his stall before the rain ruined his cooking equipment. To his surprise, Bella rushed over to help him. They laughed as they struggled to secure everything, drenched and breathless. Finding shelter under an old bus stop, Michael finally confessed his feelings. "Bella," he said, his voice trembling, "I know we've only known each other for a short time, but I can't stop thinking about you." Bella's eyes widened, and then, with a soft smile, she said, "What took you so long to say it?" "I've been waiting." Michael couldn't believe how much his life had changed since Bella walked into it. What had started as shy conversations over servings of waki turned into a bond deeper than he ever imagined. Bella was always busy kneading dough and cooking spices in their tiny kitchen before Michael woke up each morning, before the sun had a chance to fill San Antonio with its golden glow. Their little abode would be filled with the perfume of freshly cooked waki, which held the promise of brighter times to come. Bella was naturally good at business. In addition to trying out new recipes and flavors, she most significantly won over consumers with her warm smile and lively chats. Before long, patrons came for more than simply Michael's mouth-watering waki. They came to appreciate the warmth Bella gave to the small street corner where they sold their cuisine and to see her brilliant grin. Word spread throughout the bustling neighborhoods of San Antonio. If you want the best waki in the city, you need to visit Michael and Bella's stall. With the influx of new customers, Michael's profits began to soar. Bella encouraged him to save part of their earnings. "We could open our own shop," she would say, her eyes sparkling with hope. At first, Michael laughed it off, but as their savings grew, so did their dreams. One particularly busy afternoon, when they had just finished serving a long queue of hungry office workers, Michael's phone rang. It was an unknown number. At first, he hesitated to answer, But Bella nudged him playfully. "What if it's someone important?" she teased. On the other end was Mr. Mensah, a representative from a large telecommunications company in San Antonio. "I've heard about your famous wakey," he said, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. "We're hosting a conference next week, and we would love for you to cater the event." Michael was speechless. It felt like a dream, a chance to cater for a major corporation. But it was Bella, whoever the optimist, accepted the challenge without hesitation. "We can do this, Michael," she said, squeezing his hand. "This is our chance." The following week was a whirlwind of preparation. Michael and Bella worked day and night, buying ingredients in bulk, testing recipes, and practicing their presentation. When the day of the conference arrived, the couple was exhausted but determined. The moment the attendees tasted Michael's wakey, the room filled with delighted murmurs and satisfied smiles. The catering was a resounding success. The event opened doors they had never imagined. Orders began pouring in from companies and individuals alike. Soon, Michael's small streetcar transformed into a cozy shop located in one of the bustling markets of San Antonio. They painted it a cheerful shade of yellow, symbolizing the bright future they envisioned. The shop had a small sign that read, "Michael and Bella's Kitchen, home of the best waki in town." With the business thriving, Michael and Bella found time to focus on their relationship. They would walk hand in hand along the beach after a long day, the sound of waves crashing softly in the background. On Sundays, they would take a break from work to explore the vibrant streets of San Antonio, treating themselves to fried plantains and chilled coconut water. Within a year of their first meeting, they decided to take their relationship to the next level. Michael proposed on one of their evening walks by the beach, under a sky full of stars. Bella's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." For months later, they were married in a small, intimate ceremony attended by their closest friends and family. Bella wore a simple but elegant white dress, and Michael couldn't stop smiling as he watched her walk down the aisle. "You're my miracle," he whispered as they exchanged vows. Life was perfect. They had a thriving business, a cozy home, and most importantly, they had each other. But behind their laughter and shared dreams, there was a quiet longing, one that neither of them voiced but both felt deeply. As the months turned into years, Michael and Bella dreamed of filling their home with the laughter of children. They tried everything: visits to doctors, herbal remedies, and countless prayers. Every time Bella saw children playing on the street, her heart ached. She would smile and wave, but inside, she felt a pang of sadness. Michael, ever the optimist, would hold her close at night and say, "It will happen." He tried to hide his own disappointment, but Bella could see it in his eyes. The laughter they once shared in their cozy kitchen was slowly replaced by quiet conversations, both of them tiptoeing around the topic that weighed heavily on their hearts. One evening, as they sat on their shop's front porch after closing for the day, Bella finally broke down. "What if it never happens for us, Michael?" she sobbed, tears streaming down her face. Michael pulled her into his arms, gently wiping away her tears. "No matter what, we have each other, and that's more than enough." Yet even as he said those words, they both held on to hope that one day, they would hear the pitter-patter of tiny feet in their home. Little did they know that fate had something extraordinary in store for them, a miracle that would change their lives forever. 2 years after their wedding, when they had almost given up hope, Bella discovered she was pregnant. Michael cried tears of joy as he held her hand in the small clinic where they received the news. 9 months later, they welcomed a beautiful baby girl into the world, Kaina. She had Bella's gentle eyes and Michael's strong brows. Kaina was no ordinary child. By the age of 3, she was reading books and solving simple math problems. Michael and Bella nurtured her curiosity, amazed at her hunger for knowledge. They were a close-knit family, spending evenings playing games and sharing stories under the starry skies of San Antonio. But happiness, as they would soon learn, can be heartbreakingly fleeting. Kaina's 5th birthday had been a day filled with joy. The cozy living room of their home was decorated with colorful balloons, and the scent of Bella's famous jollof rice wafted through the air. Michael, Bella, and Kaina were huddled around their coffee table, playing Kaina's favorite board game. The room was filled with laughter as Michael playfully let Kaina win, the little girl squealing in delight. But in an instant, everything changed. As Michael leaned back to share another laugh with his wife and daughter, his smile froze. His eyes widened, rolling back as his body went limp. The sound of a thud as he collapsed echoed through the room, freezing Bella in terror. "Michael!" she screamed, rushing to his side. Kaina, confused and frightened, watched as her mother desperately tried to shake him awake. The seconds felt like hours until Michael's eyes fluttered open. Gasping for breath, he tried to brush off the incident. "I'm fine," he insisted weakly, wiping Bella's tears with trembling hands. But the fear in her eyes remained, and she knew deep down that this wasn't something they could ignore. The days that followed were filled with a tension that neither Michael nor Bella spoke about. Bella kept a close eye on him, watching for any signs of weakness. But a week later, while Michael was cooking breakfast, it happened again. This time, it was worse. He collapsed, hitting the floor hard. The clang of the frying pan hitting the ground sent Bella running in from the next room. This time, there were no reassurances, no brushing it off as exhaustion. "We're going to the hospital," Bella insisted, her voice shaking. Michael, seeing the fear in her eyes, reluctantly agreed. The hospital smelled sterile and cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth of their home. Bella clutched Michael's hand tightly as they sat in the waiting room, their fingers intertwined in silent fear. Hours later, after a battery of tests, the doctor called them into his office. "I'm afraid it's serious," the doctor said, his expression somber. "Michael, you have a rare condition, and it's terminal." The room seemed to spin as Bella's world shattered. She could barely hear the rest of the conversation. Words like months to live and palliative care floated around her, but all she could think of was Kaina. How would they tell their little girl that her father was dying? Michael and Bella decided to keep the diagnosis a secret from Kaina. "Papa is just tired," Bella would tell her whenever she asked why he looked so pale or needed to rest so often. But Kaina was far too perceptive for her age. She could sense the change in the air, the tension that now hung over their once lively home. One afternoon during a hospital visit, Kaina climbed onto her father's bed and took his frail hand in her tiny one. "Papa," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "Are you going to leave us?" Michael's heart broke as he looked into her wide, innocent eyes. For a moment, he considered lying, protecting her from the harsh truth. But in that moment, he realized that Kaina was strong, perhaps stronger than he had ever given her credit for. Tears welled in his eyes as he nodded slowly. "Yes, my darling," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Papa is sick, and one day I will have to leave. But remember this," he continued, placing her small hand over his heart. "I will always be with you right here, in your heart." Kaina nodded solemnly, her bottom lip trembling, but she didn't cry. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed his cheek. "I'll keep you in my heart forever, Papa," she promised. In the days that followed, Kaina displayed a strength that astounded both Michael and Bella. Though she was only 5, she seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. She would sit quietly by Michael's side, holding his hand, reading her little storybooks to him, or simply resting her head on his shoulder. Bella, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of emotions. One moment she would be strong, holding Michael's hand with a reassuring smile, and the next, she would break down in tears when she thought no one was looking. Kaina never saw her mother cry. Bella had become adept at hiding her pain, determined to protect her daughter from the sorrow that consumed her. But in those quiet moments, when it was just Michael and Kaina, there was a peace. The ticking clock on the wall reminded Michael of the time slipping away, but every second with his daughter felt like a gift. And for Kaina, each day with her father became a precious memory she would carry in her heart forever. Michael's health deteriorated rapidly. Kaina became his little guardian angel, spending hours by his bedside, refusing to cry in front of him. On the night before his passing, Kaina stayed with her father alone. They held hands, and in their hearts they said their goodbyes. The next morning, Michael passed away peacefully in his sleep. Bella was inconsolable, filled with regrets for not spending more time with him in his final moments. At the funeral, while everyone sobbed, Kaina stood quietly, her face a mask of calm. As the coffin was about to be lowered into the ground, Kaina turned to her mother and asked, "Can I hug Papa one last time?" Bella, though hesitant, nodded. Kaina climbed into the coffin, wrapping her small arms around her father. The day of the funeral dawned overcast, with heavy clouds looming over the small cemetery in San Antonio. The air was thick with grief, a quiet murmur of sobs and whispered condolences filling the air. Bella stood at the edge of the grave, her face streaked with tears. Her heart felt like it had been ripped from her chest. Friends and family gathered around, but Bella barely noticed them. All she could see was the simple wooden coffin that held her beloved Michael. Kaina, standing beside her mother, appeared calm, her wide eyes fixed on the coffin. At only 5 years old, she stood quietly in her black dress, her small hand tightly clutching a folded piece of paper. It was a letter she had written to her father, filled with words her young heart could barely understand. She had insisted on giving it to him herself, her final gift. As the pastor said the closing words, signaling that it was time to lower Michael into the ground, Kaina tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mama, please," she whispered. "Let me say goodbye." Bella hesitated, unsure if she could bear it, but seeing the determination in her daughter's eyes, she nodded. "Go ahead, my love," she said softly, her voice breaking. The mourners watched in silence as Kaina climbed onto the small wooden step that had been placed by the coffin. Her tiny arms encircled her father's motionless body as she bent over and gave him a hug. She said, "I love you, Papa," her breath warm against his icy cheek. "You will always have a place in my heart." She gave him a final forehead kiss before putting the note inside the casket. Tears ran down her cheeks as she withdrew, but her face stayed composed. A sudden gust of wind blew through the cemetery, rustling the leaves of the trees nearby as she turned to take a step back. The air was suddenly filled with a flutter of wings. When a beautiful white dove with feathers that softly glowed against the gray clouds fell from the sky, the mourners gasped and some stepped back in shock. The bird circled over the gathering and landed softly on Michael's breast after gliding with grace. The cemetery fell into a stunned silence. It was as if time itself had paused. The dove tilted its head, its dark eyes fixed on Kaina. It took a few delicate steps forward and pecked her cheek softly, almost like a kiss. For a moment, the sorrow in the air seemed to lift, replaced by something unspoken, a sense of peace, of love. Bella watched in disbelief, her tears momentarily forgotten. The adults around them murmured in hushed tones, some making the sign of the cross, others wiping their eyes. To many, the appearance of the dove felt like a miracle, an impossible sign from beyond. But Kaina, with the innocence and wisdom of a child, simply smiled. "Papa sent him," she said softly, looking up at the sky. "He wants us to know he's happy and at peace." Bella's heart clenched, a fresh wave of tears blurring her vision. But this time, they weren't just tears of sorrow. As she watched her daughter's serene face, a flicker of hope ignited in her chest. Perhaps, just perhaps, Michael truly was watching over them. The years passed, and life carried Kaina and Bella forward. Though the memory of Michael never faded, Kaina grew up to be a strong, wise woman, her father's resilience and kindness living on in her. She pursued her dreams, built a life, and eventually had children of her own. On quiet evenings, Kaina would gather her children and grandchildren in her cozy living room. The sound of their laughter would fill the air, just as it had in her childhood home so many years ago. And every so often, they would ask her to tell them the story of their great-grandfather and the miraculous dove. Sitting by the flickering firelight, Kaina would smile softly, her eyes distant with memory. "Your great-grandfather was the most loving man," she would begin. "When I was your age, he became very sick, but he never stopped loving us. Even after he left this world, he found a way to tell me he would always be with us." The children would listen, eyes wide with wonder, as she described the moment when the dove appeared at his funeral. "That dove was Papa's way of telling me that love never dies," Kaina would say, her voice thick with emotion. "Even when someone we love is no longer here, they remain with us in our hearts." As she finished the story, one of her grandchildren would inevitably ask, "Do you really think the dove was sent by him, Grandma?" Kaina would smile, looking at the eager faces of her grandchildren. Yes, she would whisper, because love is the strongest magic of all. And in those moments, a white dove would often appear, perched quietly on the windowsill outside, as if listening to the story. Kaina would smile knowingly, a silent message shared between the past and the present, proof that some bonds are too powerful to break. Do you think it was really him, Grandma? Kaina's grandkids asked as she concluded the story. Kaina's eyes sparkled as she grinned. Yes, she muttered, such love never dies. It just manifests itself in different ways. A dove sat on the window outside while they embraced her, cooing softly, seemingly to let her know that they were still there. Because she thought the dove was her father's last message of love, Kaina carried the memories of that amazing event with her throughout her life. However, what do you believe actually occurred that day? Was it a coincidence or a sign from beyond? Would you think it was a communication from Kaina's father if you were in her shoes? How might your perspective on the world alter as a result? Your opinions would be greatly appreciated. Do you think science exists, or is this just a kid's fantasy? I appreciate you listening, and until we speak again, keep your loved ones close. Thanks for watching.